Imagine we are building the most advanced high-speed sports car the world has ever seen. The engine is artificial intelligence, and it is more powerful than anything we could have dreamed of a decade ago. But right as we are about to hit the gas, we realize the roads are crumbling. The politicians are trying to ban the fuel, and a war has broken out right on top of our supply lines. The entire tech sector is standing at a terrifying, monumental crossroads, and the decisions made right now will dictate the winners and losers of the next financial decade. Hello, this is Warm Insight. Today, we are going to talk about the hidden regulatory and geopolitical crosswinds, secretly crashing into the artificial intelligence boom, and how you can protect your investments from the fallout. Leaving a like and subscribing is a huge help to us. To understand what is truly happening in the stock market right now, we have to completely change how we visualize the internet. When most people think about artificial intelligence or cloud computing, they look up, they think of a fluffy, invisible, magical cloud floating in the sky, transmitting data through thin air. But the reality is the exact opposite. The internet is heavy. The internet is made of thousands of miles of incredibly thick underwater cables and massive, sprawling concrete warehouses. Called data centers, these data centers are the physical brains of artificial intelligence. Inside these windowless buildings are thousands of computer servers, stacked on top of each other, calculating billions of math problems every single second. And doing that requires an unbelievable, almost incomprehensible amount of electricity. It generates so much heat that these buildings need industrial cooling systems just to prevent the computers from melting into slag. This brings us to our first massive global roadblock: geopolitics. Right now, global tensions, specifically the conflict involving Iran and the broader Middle East, are casting a very dark shadow over the technology sector. You might be wondering, what does a conflict in the Middle East have to do with a tech company in Silicon Valley? The answer is energy. When there is the threat of war in an oil-rich region, the global energy market panics. Oil prices become incredibly volatile. Now, imagine you are the chief executive officer of a massive tech company, and you are planning to spend billions of dollars to build a new data center. Your biggest ongoing cost is electricity. If you cannot predict how much energy is going to cost over the next 5 years because of a geopolitical traffic jam, you panic. This is exactly why we are seeing major tech leaders literally pausing their investments in Middle Eastern data centers. They are slamming on the brakes. To really grasp the magnitude of this, we have to look back at history, specifically the 1973 oil crisis. In the early 1970s, the world felt incredibly modern. People were driving massive gas-guzzling cars, and economies were booming. But then, an oil embargo was declared, and the price of crude oil skyrocketed almost overnight. Suddenly, there were massive lines at gas stations. People could not afford to heat their homes. The entire global economy was brought to its knees, simply because the underlying fuel was restricted. Today, artificial intelligence is the new booming economy, and data centers are the gas-guzzling cars. If the geopolitical situation causes an energy shock, the AI revolution could face its own version of the 1973 crisis. The invisible digital world is entirely chained to the very physical realities of war, oil, and geography. But energy is just the fuel. What about the engine itself? This brings us to the fascinating situation with companies like NVIDIA. Right now, the demand for AI chips is absolutely explosive. NVIDIA is designing the physical microchips that make artificial intelligence possible. Their stock prices and valuations have skyrocketed. But even here, there is a hidden constraint: a memory shortage. You see, an AI chip cannot work alone. It needs memory components to store the data it is processing. It is like having a genius mathematician who has no paper to write down their equations. No matter how smart they are, they cannot solve the problem without the paper. This memory shortage is causing a bottleneck in data center expansion. This situation is a perfect, modern reflection of the California gold rush of 1849. When gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill, hundreds of thousands of people rushed to California, convinced they were going to strike it rich. They quit their jobs, sold their homes, and traveled across the country to dig in the dirt. But the vast majority of those miners found absolutely nothing. They went bankrupt. Do you know who actually made the most money during the gold rush? The people who sold the shovels, the people who sold the pickaxes. A man named Levi Strauss made a fortune not by digging for gold, but by inventing incredibly durable denim jeans and selling them to the miners. Today, artificial intelligence is the gold. Thousands of software companies are digging, trying to find a profitable business model. But companies like NVIDIA are the ones selling the shovels. They are providing the foundational infrastructure. However, if they run out of wood to make the shovel handles, the entire gold rush has to pause. That is the physical reality checking the digital hype. And speaking of hype, we need to address the elephant in the room, the revenue reality check. Recently, there has been a lot of news about OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT. Despite their massive popularity, their revenue projections are falling, short of what investors expected for a massive initial public offering. When the poster child of the AI revolution misses its financial targets, the entire market trembles. This triggers something called herd mentality among retail investors. Let me explain herd mentality with a simple analogy. Imagine you are in a crowded theater watching a movie. Suddenly, one person in the front row stands up, screams and runs toward the exit. The person next to them panics and runs too. Within seconds, the entire theater is stampeding toward the door, crushing each other to get out. Nobody even bothered to turn around and see if there was actually a fire. They just ran because everyone else was running. This happens in the stock market every single day. When a big name like OpenAI shows a sign of weakness, retail investors panic. They sell off all their AI-related stocks, afraid of losing their money. They do not stop to analyze if the companies they are selling are actually failing. They just run for the exit. We have seen this exact psychological phenomenon before. We have to look back at the late 1990s during the dot-com bubble. Back then, the internet was the new magical technology. Any company that put a .com at the end of their name instantly received millions of dollars from investors. People thought the old rules of economics were dead. There was a company called Pets.com. They sold pet supplies on the internet. They spent millions of dollars on Super Bowl commercials and massive marketing campaigns, but their fundamental business model was broken. It cost them more money to ship a bag of dog food than they actually made selling it. But because of the herd mentality, investors kept throwing money at them, convinced that user growth would eventually turn into profit. Eventually, the music stopped. Investors realized there was no real money being made. The bubble burst, and trillions of dollars vanished overnight. Today, we are seeing the same fears creep into the AI sector. Are these new AI companies actually going to make a profit? Or are they just burning through cash to acquire users? When giants like Spotify experience significant stock drops despite having millions of users, it highlights the brutal reality that user growth does not always equal sustained investor confidence. But while the market panics over revenue, an even bigger threat is quietly gathering power, the regulatory hammer. Governments all over the world are waking up to the immense power of tech companies, and they are stepping in. Let us talk about a highly controversial topic, currently sitting in front of the United States Supreme Court. It is called a geofence warrant. This sounds like complex legal jargon, but it is actually quite simple and quite terrifying. Imagine a jewelry store gets robbed in the middle of a busy city. In the past, the police would have to interview witnesses, dust for fingerprints, and look at grainy security camera footage to find the suspect. It was a slow, targeted process. But today, almost every single person walking down that street has a smartphone in their pocket. That smartphone is constantly sending out a signal, communicating with GPS, satellites, and cell towers, basically yelling, "I am right here." A geofence warrant is when the police go to a massive tech company, like Google, and ask them to draw a digital circle on a map around that jewelry store. The police then demand the digital information of every single person whose phone was inside that circle during the time of the robbery. Think about the implications of this. You could be totally innocent. You could have just been buying a cup of coffee next door. But because your phone pinged a satellite, your data is suddenly swept up in a criminal investigation. This touches on a fundamental historical debate about privacy. In the United States, the Fourth Amendment was written specifically to protect citizens from unreasonable searches and seizures. The founders wrote this because British soldiers used to have general warrants, allowing them to search any home they wanted, at any time, for any reason. The Fourth Amendment was designed to say, no, you need a specific reason to search a specific person. But a geofence warrant acts almost exactly like those old British general warrants. It searches everyone in a given area. As governments debate these issues, tech companies are caught in the crossfire. if regulations become too strict, the very data that artificial intelligence relies on to learn and grow could be cut off. And it is not just privacy, it is about money and content. Look at Australia. The Australian government recently made a massive move to force big tech companies to pay news publishers for their content. For years, tech giants have been taking news articles, summarizing them and displaying them on their platforms, keeping the users and the advertising revenue for themselves, while the original journalists got nothing. Australia stepped in and said, "This is unfair. You must pay the creators." This represents a global trend. Governments are trying to rebalance the digital economy. This mirrors the historical invention of the printing press. In the 15th century, when Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, it completely disrupted the world. Suddenly, information could be copied and distributed massively. But it also led to rampant piracy. Anyone could take an author's work, print it, and sell it without giving the author a dime. This chaos eventually led to the creation of the first copyright laws, designed to protect the creators of information. Today, artificial intelligence is the new printing press. It can scrape the entire internet, take every article, book, and painting ever made, and use it to generate new content. Governments are stepping in to create new copyright laws for the digital age, and this regulatory fog is creating immense uncertainty for tech investors. So, with wars, regulations, and bursting bubbles, how does a smart investor actually survive? They use the contrarian approach. A contrarian is someone who looks at what the herd is doing and intentionally does the opposite. While everyone is fighting over the biggest, most obvious AI companies, the smart money is looking for hidden strategic bets. Take a look at Match Group, the company behind massive dating apps like Tinder. Recently, they made a strategic investment in a highly specialized niche dating app called Sniffies. Why would a massive conglomerate invest in something so small and specific? Because they realize that the broad, general market for online romance is maturing. It is saturated. Everyone already has the big apps. To find new growth, you have to find specialized communities with highly engaged users. This is called a blue ocean strategy. Imagine you want to open a grocery store. If you open a generic supermarket right next to a massive Walmart, you are going to get crushed. Walmart can lower their prices and drive you out of business. That is a red ocean, full of blood and competition. But if you open a highly specialized, organic, gluten-free vegan bakery, Walmart cannot compete with your specific expertise. You have found a blue ocean, an uncontested market space. Smart tech investors are doing exactly this. They are ignoring the noisy, crowded AI chatbots and looking for companies applying AI to very specific, profitable niches, like enterprise productivity or specialized supply chain management. To physically protect your money, you have to build a financial fortress. Institutional investors often use a framework like the 70-20-10 asset allocation seesaw. This means putting 70% of your capital into diversified, strong stocks, 20% into safe, stable assets, like bonds, and keeping 10% in pure cash. Let us break this down. In the tech landscape, that 70% should not be thrown at random AI startups. It should be directed toward exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, that specialize in the foundational infrastructure. Remember the shovels from the gold rush? You want ETFs focused on semiconductors and cloud computing. These are the companies that will make money, regardless of which specific AI software wins the race. The 20% in safe assets acts as a shock absorber. If the AI bubble bursts, this money is protected. And the 10% in cash is your ammunition. When the market panics and great companies go on sale for cheap, you have the cash ready to strike. But even with a fortress, you need a strategy to deploy your troops. You need a survival mechanic. The absolute best risk management tool in a volatile market is called dollar cost averaging. To understand this, let us use a very simple fifth-grade analogy. Imagine you are a farmer and you have a giant sack of apple seeds. You want to plant an orchard. You look at the weather forecast and it is totally unpredictable. Tomorrow could be perfectly sunny, or it could be a devastating hurricane. You have two choices. Choice number one, you take the entire sack of seeds and throw them all into the dirt on Monday. If the sun shines, you are going to be rich. But if the hurricane hits, every single seed washes away and you are completely ruined. You tried to time the weather and you failed. Choice number two is dollar cost averaging. Instead of throwing all your seeds at once, You reach into the bag and take out one small handful. You plant that handful on Monday. The next Monday, rain or shine, you plant another handful. You do this every single week for a year. If a storm comes, you only lose that one small handful. If the sun shines, those seeds grow. Over the course of the year, you mathematically average out the weather. You eliminate the risk of the storm. In the stock market, the seeds are your money. And the weather is the volatile price of tech stocks. If you take your entire life savings and buy NVIDIA stock on a Tuesday, and the market crashes on Wednesday, you are devastated. But if you invest a small fixed amount of money every single month, regardless of whether the stock is up or down, you buy more shares when the price is cheap, and fewer shares when the price is expensive. You smooth out the chaotic waves of the market, building long-term wealth without losing sleep over the daily news cycle. The artificial intelligence revolution is not going to stop. Despite the geopolitical tensions, the data center delays, and the regulatory crackdowns, the core technology is too powerful to be ignored. It will reshape our economies just like the internet did 20 years ago. But the road there will be paved with bankruptcies, volatile crashes, and massive wealth transfers. True foresight lies not in predicting the next big breakthrough, but in building resilience through diversification and disciplined strategy.